welcome to Lyfe Cast. This is the very first episode of what's going to be a weekly video podcast where I bring in some of the very best people that I know and in the communities to talk about each one of the principles. And today, very happy to have my former employer, but one of my very best friends and someone I consider family, Mr. David Jacobs from Level 3 Fitness. He's the owner and co-founder, or co-owner and co-founder. So very happy to have David today. And yeah, hi David, how you doing, brother?
Happy to be here, man.
Wonderful. Tell us a little bit about you, what you do at Level 3, all those kind of things.
Well, first of all, I'm happy to be here because my man Lennon here has got a wonderful business going with Lyfe Cast, and I was inspired and invited me on, so thank you.
My pleasure.
Really happy to be here.
Yeah.
And Level 3 Fitness is a product of a lot of hard years of work and 20-year career in the industry with my partner Neil Bogan and wonderful employees such as yourself formerly and others that are still there and that have been with us in the past. We bring a pathway to healthy living through healing, mobility, and strength, which is just maybe one way to say, like, we help people move and move well and try and feel good and let them do the things in life that they really love instead of looking at gym as a means of itself. We're trying to be in the gym to help them live life better.
Awesome. Seems like you're teaching them how to be humans, huh?
Trying to be human, man.
I like it. Wonderful, wonderful. You know, one thing I can truly say too, as an employee of you guys, it's not just the clients that you guys have really affect, but as all the employees, and I can say this from talking to all my former coworkers, is you guys have changed our lives on so many levels, not just as professionals, but as just human beings. You know, I made the jump to come over to you guys. This was about 3.5 years ago. Super scared, but man, it was one of the best things I've ever made. And I literally wouldn't be here talking to you, doing any of this without you guys. So, you know, what you do, what you teach is what you preach, and what you do in life. Anyways, I just love it. You guys are awesome. You're family forever. And I cherish the relationship on so many levels. Awesome. So that's a good segue. Let's talk about emotional intelligence today. All right. Let's start with this. When I say emotional intelligence, what does that mean to you? Off top.
It means a lot. I've kind of struggled with this topic my whole life, and in the last 10 years, I've kind of been very fortunate enough to find teachers and subject matter that was interesting to me, that really I needed. It was very applicable to helping my life circumstance and healing. So emotional intelligence, when I just hear it, it grabs my interest, and that's all. Again, I mean, you said, "Hey, come on over. We want to do a podcast on emotional intelligence." I didn't hesitate. I was like, "When and where?"
Right.
Because this is something that is controlling over my life. It drives almost every decision I make, which I guess I get to sit here kind of fondly and say, I guess I'm emotionally intelligent, because as I get to the definition of what I think emotionally intelligent is it's using, you know, your feelings to drive your choices in life. And so, you know, I think I grew up as an emotionally inept young man and not understanding feelings and suppressing them, and it led to a lot of, you know, bad health, nervous system conditions, overweight, and, you know, going to school scared, which is no way to go learn. You know, there's a scared brain and a learning brain, and
right.
They're not the same brain, and so going to school scared is just a terrible feeling, and it leads to a lot of negative physical outcomes and health and bad situations. So you know, you say emotional intelligence, I'm like, yeah, when and where, let's talk about it. And what does it mean to me is using your feelings to drive choices that are going to be prosperous, healthy, things that are conducive towards, you know, living well and enjoying the human experience.
Right. I love it. Well, you know, that brings me to one of the biggest reasons I wanted you to come on here to discuss emotional intelligence, as I'm sure that you know, we've talked about obviously outside of this podcast, but you and I, for over the last 3.5 years of knowing one another, really have a lot of conversations that, why it might not be, well, this is emotional intelligence and blah, blah, blah. It is directly centered around what those kind of 4 components were, that I never really broke them down into the 4 components that I am kind of doing a little more research, like what are the experts telling me. And I really like that you know, that whole of like being self-aware and then being able to self-manage, having empathy, and then developing social skills. When you kind of broke it down in those categories, for me, it's like, wow, we talk about all of those every day. And not only when we talk about them, we implemented them into our profession every day. One of the biggest things I feel like as a health professional, a trainer, whatever you want to call us, is that we're trying to teach people and how to deal with their emotions as much as their physical things, because we really, at least I think, and I think we would agree, we know that the mental and the physical, and when you bring in the spiritual, right, those all go together, and we really try to look at the whole person as a human being and not just as someone coming to exercise or someone who has an ouchy shoulder or something.
I've even come across that, we use language like those three are connected, mind, body, spirit, and agree that that's a nice concept for us, but to like up our game, even on communication, the oneness of mind, body, spirit is who we are. It's who you are. It's who I am. It's like my mind, body, spirit together. And on that Venn diagram of mind, body, like where those two intersect, if your emotions are frustrated, angry, sad, mad, there's a body cell fiber tightness that's going to be connected with it. So as much as it's awesome, we should be talking about mind and we should be talking about body so we can really get clarity and understand things. It's super important to bring it back and say, hey, the whole system is not just these parts. It's like, woo, mind, body, spirit, and 3 dimensions at all times, and past, present, and future kind of really kind of collide. And this is who we are right here, right now. And
that's kind of the whole idea behind like the 3 flames way of approaching this, right? Is that if you look at fire, it's all over the place. It's never in just one path, right? The more good fuel you give it, those individual fires. But at the end of the day, we want all the fires to become one. And when you truly start to take these principles that we're teaching and kind of implement them, you see that there's no more 3 flames. It's one flame, and they're almost indistinguishable. Right, exactly. And that's the whole idea, is implement the principles and how they fit in your life. There's no rules about this, right? And I think, as I've said, all the principles that I've outlined, these are principles that I've kind of thought of and taken the bits and pieces from the best people I've ever come across, read, had personal contacts with, and kind of made my own recipe, if you will. And that's what I'm inviting everybody who is going to be part of this this movement to enhance our human experience. Come up with your own principles as well. That's part of the whole thing of being fluid and dynamic, that there is infinite ways to apply these principles. Come up with your own. And so that, I think that really once you start going with those, you really start seeing that body, mind, soul, and then you kind of start gravitating towards people who share those similar interests and are kind of going that way. And I think that helps. I kind of just say that to say that you and I are in a profession that really enabled us to kind of work on those things as we taught them to others. What are your thoughts about kind of the techniques or things that you may use with professionally or personally that to kind of enhance your emotional intelligence and continue to grow that way?
How the profession enhances my emotional intelligence is interesting, because fortunate enough, my mentor, Lenny offered up some wonderful wisdom a long time ago to me, and it really applies. And his professional anchor was be a creative, humble facilitator. And I used to go to work for about 10 years thinking I'm the best at what I do. I really, I studied my muscles and I knew my anatomy as good as I could, and an A+ student in anatomy in college, and really prided myself at the time, which I now, with more emotional intelligence, realize that's kind of a foolish characteristic, or I'm less proud, so to speak. And I take pleasure in knowing that pride is there's really no room for pride in training other individuals.
Right.
Like, showing up to work is not about what I know and telling them it's your sartorius that's too tight and you can't do this, and look at what you can, what you can't squat, or you're not strong enough to do this and that. That's really not, that I went to work with that confidence or borderline arrogance of I can help anybody, I can fix somebody. And Lenny really taught me, to go to work instead of a master technical technician to become a creative, humble facilitator. And that transition from going from like, I know this body so well I can fix anybody, to, boy, the body's really amazing. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I know this. I might know it a little bit better than others, but at the end of the day, the body's quite complex. Each individual is quite complex. Like we said just a minute ago, emotional and physical bodies, the mind and body come together. So I'm not just working with a body, I'm working with a human that has a mind and a soul, and depending on how they're feeling that day is going to really, really affect the session. So if I come in and say we're doing 3 sets and 3 sets and 3 sets of this, because that's what they did last Wednesday, I'm totally going to miss it because they're a human coming in. And so I have to be humble enough to understand that, be creative enough to be on the fly, that when they come in and say, hey, I'm really tired, I didn't sleep last night. Like, am I really going to stack up that weight on them like I did last week and hurt them? Not a chance. Right. So the creativity of like, how am I going to get somebody working out and get their physical wellness back on track? Because that's what they're paying me to do. Right. But, also, whoa, that's not what I was planning to do with you today. Yeah. So they're kind of have to go out the plan. Here comes the creativity. And then facilitate. Like, don't come in and impose a bunch of stuff on somebody. Like, get the best out of them. Be a coach. Expose what they're giving you and try and teach them the next best step for them at that day, that time. Yeah. And I brought a little handout just to show the audience because I love this. It just fits in line with what my teacher Lenny had taught me. Maybe we'll go hold that up to the camera. It's just so awesome. I hope everybody, if any teacher, back up just a little bit, Lennon, back up a little right there. If any teacher, parent, coach, trainer, doctor could read this and just understand this, I'd be happy about the rest of today. Come on back, Lennon, and I'll read it out loud because it kind of melts my heart. Some teachers taught the curriculum today, other teachers taught students today, and there's a big difference. And, getting up there and imposing you go to a conference, we've all done this, and I'm the worst at it. If any of my clients ever see this, they're gonna be like, oh, that's David. You go to a conference and you learn something so fantastic and you just think, I've got to go do that to everybody. And I learned some soft tissue techniques and I came home and 30 people got their ankle rubbed, the first day on Monday morning, and an exhausting week, and it's so exciting. And you realize, well, maybe that's what if somebody didn't want to be working on their ankle that day, or maybe they didn't need it, their feet, people have sensitivity, so on, and that's why we're here. Emotional intelligence is about understanding part of, what your skill set is, like self-awareness, like, boy, I'm a really good teacher at physical movement, right? But if I don't use my awareness of the people I'm doing it with, I'm just gonna pound them with the transverse plane, the frontal plane, the sagittal plane, the what, and the what, yeah. and you want me to do what? I'm like, I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you try twisting? And so there's a language to, within emotional intelligence that is always thinking of what is the other person hearing? Mm-hmm. It's that basic communication, speaker, audience. I'm the speaker, you're the audience in my session, and I can't just come in and give you the lecture I want to give you because you might not be ready to hear it. Right. And so I really have to come in and assess and see how that audience is ready for today. How are they, and I'm assessing not only how they're going to communicate with me and their energy levels, but how their joints are going to move and their muscles are going to move. Right. So I can move them safely and actually be productive in that hour. So it's like, oh man, again, the creative, humble facilitator, my mentor ended he ended that lecture, he ended the weekend course with that, and he ended the last page after 250 pages of science about fascia and movement and touch, and it was just amazing. But the last page was, we must shift from master technical technician to creative, humble facilitator, and that'd be my wish for all teachers and parents and just people. Don't go impose your agenda on folks. Mm-hmm. There is a communication and a dialogue that needs to happen, and it's two-way street. We apply hot communication at level 3 fitness, honest, open, and two-way. And that two-way piece is like looking at the audience, seeing how they're responding, making sure you're not boring them to death or going way over their head or not hurting their feelings, just kind of taking in how they're doing and trying to give them the best opportunity for growth.
Well, I love that. You said a lot of great stuff in there. One thing that really stood out to me, what you said, it was actually something I learned from you guys. I came into level 3 knowing my physiology, right? But I came in as the type of trainer that I would write my workouts before they got in. And that's not to say that I wouldn't change them, but it's like, this is the plan. One thing you guys taught me was the most important thing that you do in the session is that first, hey, legitimate love, how are you doing, then how are you feeling today at this time right now. And that's what matters more than absolutely anything. And it really takes me back, and I think a lot of trainers or people who have worked with specific with individuals very one-on-one will realize sometimes they come in and the workout's the last thing they need that day, honestly.
The workout's the last
right?
thing they need that day.
You have the best workout, and you know what? You might get through 2 exercises because you know what? That person needed to grow emotionally, right? And part of the kind of segues into what you were saying. I love what you were saying because you were touching on every single one of those like 4 components. You had that self-awareness of, okay, first of all, even if I am a master technician, which Lenny is, that's not the most important part. I need to be more self-aware that I need to be the humble facilitator, and what they're telling me matters. And then that's that like social component, right? That it talks about is like part of emotional intelligence is not just how you're dealing with your feelings and how those kind of things, but then how the people that you have to interact with, how you deal with theirs, and it's a very real thing, mirror neurons, where you see someone smiling, you smile. You see someone frown, you frown, and you might not even know that happens.
Like
but
this.
Yeah, exactly.
Sit
Right?
up, and everybody in the room sits up.
Sits up, or right, and so that's one of those things where it's like to be able to kind of move past that and deal with, hey, whatever their energy is bringing, I'm not going to accept it with hostility, but with empathy, right? Another one of those things. And then I'm going to regulate myself and manage myself accordingly to kind of bring it all together. And I think that one of the reasons that level 3 is so successful and that we have such great people there is that we keep that in mind quite a bit, that there actually is the individual, and that the emotional experience is just as important as that physical experience.
Yeah, it's really our first principle, and if anybody needs the second principle, refer to first principle.
Yeah.
Like, just pay attention to the customer, like, and client, like, what does that person need? And if you come in with an agenda of anything other than that, you're probably gonna have problems.
Yeah.
Because the first if you abandon your principles, you're
Well, and I think we see a lot of trainers who have a lot of the stuff and they're good, but they don't approach it from that necessarily that right perspective, and that really limits their ability to help train the whole entire human being. While they might make big physical strong people, what are they missing when it's just that exercise component? I think that's one thing that, speaking for myself, that's really helped me with my emotional intelligence, is to be able to deal with so many different people, so many different ways. And you might deal in a day with 8 different people, 9 different, if you're Neil, 300 different people in a day.
You bring up a really good point about something that I think is often really overlooked in emotional intelligence, and that is diversity. It's like, if you know one person and only one person, then you don't know much about people. And if you hang out with a very homogenous group of people, and it lets you, even in a trainer world, it might be the 40-year-old fit mom. If that's who you train and that's all you train, if a 75-year-old dad comes in, you're going to have a really tough session, because the body doesn't work the same. At 75, and male female anatomy had different variances, and so that's just like for a trainer perspective, like movement. If the diversity of working with different people, I've got to be able to work with my 5-year-old son all the way up to a 92-year-old grandma and everything in between. And I can, and that allows me to, again, it's the human component first. Hey, I have a human in front of me. How am I going to try and help them become a better mover, which will facilitate good life and healthy life, so they don't have pain and they can do the things they want to do. That's my mission. So excuse me. So, the movement piece has taught me about the emotional intelligence of diversity, variability. Like, boy, if I used to only train like the healthy people,
right.
and then I realized, boy, none of these guys are really that healthy. They look fit because they're hitting the tennis ball and the golf ball really hard, but when I ask them to squat, they say their knee hurts, or they're out of breath, real fast, and we just do a couple flights of stairs, but they can lift a lot of weight, or they can't touch their toes, but the golf, they're telling me they're winning in golf. And I'm just thinking, well, wait a minute, the golf ball's on the ground. How are they even reaching down there if they can't touch their toes? They're clearly straining their spine and other things that are going to, hurt their life. So anyway, so within movement, learning the diversity by working with other people and having a child that's young and a grandma that's old and not working with a big, variety of people has taught me, boy, you learn a lot that can come back, enhance my communication with others, get more out of our sessions or relationships, not sessions, but relationships with people. And so I got a little sidetracked. Sorry, because I'm just thinking about like how much it's helped me, like the variety, but bringing it back to like relationships with people, like that's a huge part of relationship management and social awareness.
Yes.
So it's like, I only hang out with people that think like me, talk like me, look like me, believe in what I believe in. It's really hard to grow there. There's no challenge. I think that's why our country's in the trouble that we're in.
I was just about to say,
you don't listen to people.
You've been talking about kind of how that applies in the job where you have a ton of variability of who comes in. So one thing that reminded me of, and I think it's again, Lenny, who's big on the principle part of it, right? If you understand principles, it doesn't matter who it is, because you can apply the principles to any human being. And then I wanted to kind of take that into, you're right, as far as what's going on, like it's not even just our country, it's in the world right now. It's very, we are getting almost tribal in a bad way, right? It's one thing because you want to flock to people who are similar interests and who are doing similar things on the good kind of healthy path or whatever. But at the same time, if you hang around too many people that are just like you, are you not shadowing and bringing in your perspective of the world into more of a tunnel vision, and then creating an adverse relationship with someone that doesn't
difficulty in understanding. I think we end up having a difficult time understanding what this person on the other side of the aisle or table or state or country is saying, because we have no perspective of where they're coming from. And that is what emotional intelligence is like trying to understand where my audience or my client coming in, or how are you today, is where are you coming from? Who are you today? And so if we have a conversation it wouldn't matter what the political topic is, it's like to be able to sit at a table with another human being and be able to understand where they're coming from is critical to having a conversation of any benefit. There's not, instead of a debate where two people argue and one person wins and one person loses and both people go home hating each other and nobody learned anything. Debate, stupid.
Right.
Conversation is a much better term, and I love teaching. So much for productive conversation. And me and Lennon are going to sit down today. Hey, let's talk about emotional intelligence. I want to hear what you have to say. Well, I want to hear what you have to say.
Right.
And so when we leave, I'm going to understand Lennon more. He'll understand me more. We'll both have opened up our eyes to different topics and elevate each other. Topics of emotional intelligence have expanded. And we might disagree on certain things. Not much on this topic.
Right.
We both, that's why we're here. We both love this topic and have seen the benefit and the value of studying it as a tool for living. But man, we live in it. And I think that's another reason why I'm here. I'm sorry. That's why I'm here. Is I live in I'll boldly say I live in an emotionally intelligent, corrupt, bankrupt world. The reason I want to put a video together for anyone, if one person learns something today, I'm gonna be super happy. Is I am lonely out here. I got called by my friend who happens to know a lot about emotional intelligence, and I recognize that in you, and I'm like, two about 40-year-old dudes need to talk about this for maybe somebody else to understand, because it's so sad to be walking around with people that don't understand their feelings or have these huge feelings and have no pathway or tools for expressing them or bettering their life situation because they're not using these principles of like, hey, self-awareness, self-management. Like how do you regulate when you feel that way? And there was one piece that I in getting ready for today I want to share. It's perfect right here. There's a huge difference between feelings and actions. All feelings are acceptable, but not all actions are. And so we've got a society of tons of feelings. Everybody's got them. Mad, angry, sad, happy, elated, joyful. I mean, we're all explosive with energy, and that's awesome. That is the human experience. That flame is like they're out there, but they're not that cohesive flame like you want. It's ballistic crap, anger, and road rage, and I'll shoot you if you step on my shoe. And it's like you can have the feeling. You can be pissed off somebody slipped on your shoe. You just can't punch them for it.
Exactly.
You need to learn how to channel your language.
And, you know, I think that at the end of the day, that is like what you just said is the true importance of emotional intelligence, because everything we do is behavior. There's nothing that we do that is not behavior, right? And most of our behavior is learned at some point. You know, whether we know it or not, from the time we're actually in utero up through right now, you know, behavior is learned. What I think where emotional intelligence really comes in, and I think that many of us can probably empathize or at least feel this and probably have experienced it personally, is when we're in high emotional states, these emotional extremes, the emotion itself is neither good nor bad. It's necessary. It's communicating to you, right? But it's that ability to have the emotional intelligence to say, I am not going to engage in any significant behaviors, and that's a conversation or going to get in a fight with somebody or whatever. When you're in any super high emotional state, you know, it doesn't benefit us. It's not going to enhance the human experience to kind of behave in that way.
That's a nice little quote right here to top that, right?
What's it say?
Feelings are much like waves. We can't stop them from coming, but we can choose which ones to surf. So
I love that.
So like you're really gonna ride that huge 80-foot wave and die on it? You know, that's what you're choosing when you're angry. If somebody bumps your car and you get out and you're gonna get up there and show them who's boss, you bumped my brand new car.
Right.
What the hell? What happens when a 9-foot giant strapped to the nines comes out of that car? You're gonna go back in your car and realize your anger was the wrong wave to chew on.
Dangerous jiu-jitsu player, right?
Right. That's just like, that's an example of like a coach of mine. You know, give a little shout out to Jack Rossi. Taught me, you know, just gave me that wonderful example of anger. And there's a really nice fine line between anger and frustration.
Right.
And here's this wave of emotion. Here it comes. I'm frustrated. Somebody just scratched my car. No, he bashed me. I'm really angry. Well, what are you going to do about it? That action, that behavior, you might get your life killed because somebody scratched your car. Yeah. That's a dangerous action off of an emotion.
Or you might hurt someone else.
You really want to be thinking about self-regulation on that. Or maybe it's when you're really happy and exuberant, you start driving fast and you can't wait to get home to tell your wife you just got a raise or something exciting, right. And you get pulled over and you have a $200 speeding ticket, and you're sitting there thinking, I really need some self-regulation. That excitement is not, that may be a bad example, but like...
Actually, no, that's, I think, a perfect example.
Emotion.
Because of this. Too often, I think people label emotions as good or bad.
Right.
Happy is a good emotion, love is a good emotion,
right.
Anger, fear are bad emotions.
All of them are acceptable.
And not only acceptable, 100% necessary.
Encouraged.
Right? The people who can't feel the emotions, who are on those sociopathic, psychopathic levels, that's some dangerous stuff, and it's really, really hard to deal with. I think not having emotions, from some people I've talked to who struggle with either not having them or not being able to kind of tap into them. But I think that the biggest thing that we need to really start realizing is that all emotions it's a communication that your body, mind, and soul are giving you from the stimulus that it's received. At the end of the day, our goal is to say, hey, that communication is 100% fine. Let's not suppress it. And like you said, we can be in high states of joy and happiness and make horrible decisions, right?
We just won the Super Bowl. Let's flip a car.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going downtown to the parade. Next thing you know,
that's your pepper spray. That went from excitement to hysteria, and hysteria is not a good behavior. Good place to be.
I think emotional intelligence, as we gain higher levels of it, and we should be trying to do that every day. There's no limit to this shit, right? But what I think that, really, really is super important as we learn to apply this is to understand that we're going to try to avoid the emotional extremes. And when you have a higher level of emotional intelligence, you're able to actually recognize that you may be getting into an emotional extreme.
I'm about to be angry. I better take a deep...
Yeah, and you can do a couple of things. You can either say, I'm about to be angry, I'm going to remove myself from any given situation till I'm not as angry. And then the second part of that is to go through some techniques maybe that will help bring you down from that anger.
I just realized when we're talking, I'm like, God, there's when you just described cause and effect, kind of everybody's heard this description, cause and effect paradigm. We really need to have a new solid paradigm of language that says cause, pause, and it could be a nice little rhyme, cause, pause, think. effect.
Yeah, I love
you
it.
know, and that's the
That
emotional.
pause.
That is the emotional intelligence. The pause, the thinking about how is my feeling driving my next behavior, and then doing a behavior that's in turn healthy or productive instead of destructive, because that's not anything part of the human organism or the experience. You don't destroy yourself or others.
Right.
So to be emotionally intelligent, it's pause, think, or respond instead of react. You know, reaction is like you call me a dirty word, I'm like, oh hey man, you can't do that to me. That's a reaction.
F you,
right?
Twice as much.
And I've learned that definition of the difference between reaction and response. A response has that little 1 second prefrontal cortex, wake up, what should I do?
Right.
Oh, I think this person's really angry. I'm not going to take it personally because he's angry, so it's not what I said. He's got a problem. I'm going to not assume that he's going to be safe with me. I'm going to take a step backwards and not provoke this conflict. It's not just pacifism, it's being intelligent about like, whoa, somebody is really ticked off. Is anything that I'm going to say make this man not more ticked off?
Right.
Like, I better really choose my words wisely.
That's that social component.
Social awareness
right?
and relationship management. Like, how are we going to get...
And empathy, right? Isn't part of empathy the ability...
This guy's really mad.
Yeah. You know what? But the part of the empathy is, you know what? I've been really mad before. And you know what? You want to know what I didn't...
Lose control.
Want to know what I didn't respond well to? Is someone telling me that I shouldn't be really mad anymore. And I need to do this and that. I really didn't respond well to that. So if you can learn to have, you know, empathy in that situation, and what's so cool, and this kind of is a little bit of a segue, is so far we've really been talking about like real life application of emotional intelligence, which is super important. But then there's also a physiological aspect that we're not realizing in behavior. And behavior legitimately influences your physiology on a number of levels, right? What you do absolutely changes the inside of what's going on. And they've done a number of studies of, they'll take identical twins with the exact same everything at birth. One lives a really unhealthy lifestyle, the other one lives a healthier lifestyle, and their whole entire genetic makeup is now different. Their physiology is different. And what I found that when I was doing a little more like research into emotional intelligence and the science behind it, because you know me, I come from the exercise physiology background. I like to know that, hey, is there science that supports some of this stuff? And one thing I found that I thought was super cool in trying to do behaviors that promote increased emotional intelligence is literally there's a connection between your limbic system and your reptilian brain all the way up to the prefrontal cortex and that rational type of brain. And then as you do this, there's a pathway, like a physiological pathway, and the brain is so not permanent. It literally changes its shape and its physiology and its neural grooving, and axons and nerves grow together and connect, or they don't, right? And those communication highways become, you know, closed off, closed for construction, basically. What I love, about the human experience is that we can change those, and it's never too late to start to kind of open up a lot of those pathways. But it's like, man, for me, I think it's crazy that the things we do don't just like they do make you feel better, but there's like a real stuff going on inside you that's chemistry and physics and biology. And to me, I think that's fascinating that not only can we try to work on these emotional, intelligence things, so we have better interactions with people, but it's literally making you healthier yourselves and all that stuff.
I want to give a shout out to this man right here. What he just said was nice for the camera, but for me, I got to experience watching you participate in this stuff. I kind of watched you over the last year, come across some beautiful science of breathing. Thank you, Wim Hof.
Wim Hof, shout out.
From cold showers to breathing, cold exposure breathing, meditation, intent, upping your emotional intelligence game, working on these types of things, reading podcasts, doing jujitsu, lots of things of self-growth, self-awareness. It starts with self-awareness, knowing what you weren't getting, knowing what you need, and then to watch you lose weight, learn a new craft that you love so much, and we can all see the flame of enjoyment and the soul flame go really up high, and the physical, and so anyway, just like, you're talking about it all, and yeah, it's nice that we all do, there's wonderful science that says like as you meditate, you know, the
This stuff
physiology
happens.
changes,
Right.
and as you act kind, you know, our blood pressure can go down, our resting heart rate can go down, our sleep and rest can become more restful. We can live a better life.
Changes.
We can have a much more physiologically healthier life because of some things that we're talking about today, which awesome. But like a couple things, words are not the experience. So like as we tell it to people, everybody has to kind of know for themselves and experience it. Have you done anything for yourself that was like on this level of either kindness, empathy? Have anybody ever gone and done a volunteer day? You know, you go help rake the leaves for an old person, or we participate with the American Lung Association with Level 3 Fitness all the time,
Right.
and we donate like $25,000 of fundraising, and we climb a building and we see all the energy, and you see a cancer survivor or somebody that is suffering from COPD, and you're like, yeah, you know, we really know that we're like, you know, contributing to the cause and helping people, and you like leave there and you're like, when's next year? When can I help again?
Yeah.
Who can I help? You're looking around like, that felt so good. You look back and like, that's the most rewarding day of the year when you help somebody and you do something good, and you're like, that physiology, that mindset, that change, that relationship that you created, that call and that thank you guys were so helpful, all those things, like whoa, those are really changing my body.
Yeah.
You know, like those are experiences that you can't take back. And I think every year about like I get to volunteer with some kids at Colorado Coalition for the Homeless. Awesome. Each year, one day a year, and you know, a client of mine invited me there about 4 years ago, and I was a little skeptic. I was like, how am I going to teach 250 different kids exercise? I've never met them, right. You know. And it was crazy, but after 2 hours of just, hey, you do jumping jack and you squat, and they're coming in like 5 at a time, and like there's no way that wasn't the best day of my year.
Right.
Best day of my year. And I got to give back to the community that I love, and teach what I love. And when you get to connect with people, emotional intelligence, you know, when you get a self-aware, I love teaching what I didn't have as a child. So I love giving that back to the community. You know, it's just like, you just look back and then you can sum it up like the emotional intelligence is what drove the best day of my year, and what probably was the best day of those 250 kids' years, because somebody was giving them attention, care, specific and exercise instruction that will help their bodies feel better, look better, function better. You know, it's like those kids at the Colorado Coalition Homeless don't exactly get personal training, you know, sessions with people. So I just, you know, busted my butt, bared down, and like for the 5-10 minutes that I had them, it's what could I teach that kid that would help them, and if they're not interested, ask them what they're interested in. Just like I would start a personal training session, like, what do you like to do? Oh, you like football? Hey, can you show me how a middle linebacker would get set? Right. You know, like, oh, you can't squat. If you want to be a middle linebacker, you better start practicing this exercise. You know, like, got that connection, but it's all about the connection, and you already said it. The interaction is as important as the intervention. And when we're working with people or talking with our partners or friends, it's all about the interaction. It's not about your agenda or what you're trying to get done. You'll get so much more out of just backing up, slow down, pause, breathe, and communicate with somebody. Like, you don't have to come imposing. That's that big impose expo. It's like, don't come impose and drive that. You know, I think that'd be a good place to like. I wanted to, you know, leave. I don't know if you have some more questions.
I got something else I wanted to say real quick, and then
I got one. You know, it's a closing. You know, kind of.
Let me get this out, and then we'll close out with it. What you said, a couple of things, and I think the first thing was thank you for the acknowledgement and the love, legitimately, on the work that I've put in. It always feels.
Follow this man. He knows what he's doing. I've seen him change his life. It
always feels good to you know, especially the people that you love and notice and acknowledge that. So I legitimately thank you for that. That compliment was very nice. It's one thing we struggle in, and that's part of emotional intelligence, is accepting compliments. But I wanted to kind of just touch a little bit on that process. You know, one of the biggest things, I've gone through a stressful year, and I'm not going to touch too much on the specifics right now, but one of the biggest things and the hardest part in the whole thing, I think, is the self-awareness part. To dig down and say, hey, honestly, what am I good at? And that's good, but also, what do I really need to improve? And I think as humans, we're taught that the stuff that's not good, just don't look at it. Ignore it. It's hard. Maybe it's hard for us to look and say, hey, I'm not great at this, or I need to improve on that. That's a big skill, and that's, I think, to increasing emotional intelligence, the place where, for me at least, it had to start, because I went through my situation. I'm like, you know what? I'm a good person. I live, I do good things. I'm living life overall the right way. But what I didn't understand was, man, there's some behaviors that just aren't that cool, and I was able to recognize those. And I went to therapy, and I'll give a big quick shout out to therapy. If anyone is questioning going, they feel like they need it, get your butt in there. It's been one of the best things of my life, and I like it to go and see a personal trainer. You're trying to deal with stuff with a professional. Anyways, just want to shout out therapy in general. Go if you need it.
Agree.
But anyways, my biggest thing was that self-awareness part of it. That's where, when we want to increase emotional intelligence, we have to identify those areas in which we're good, and we can keep promoting those, but find the ones that we need improvement on, and kind of develop ways to improve those. And then my last little segue, and then we'll get into it, is the ways to improve emotional intelligence and a lot of these other things. As you'll see as we go through all the principles, it's not difficult stuff. It's not rocket science. Right. It's as little as going to volunteer.
It's ridiculously simple. The complex simplicity.
It's as little as, if you're on a walk and you see someone, offer them a legitimate kindness, and if you ask them how their day, stop and listen to it for a second. These little things, it's as simple as taking 2 minutes to sit and breathe for a second. I've always said this, that through all these principles and all these behaviors, and the hardest part is just to do it, right? To get your butt up and to do it, and to find consistency with it. And that's been my whole idea with trying to introduce the principles 1 week at a time, is so we can say, hey, not overwhelming, don't need to make a million changes every week. It's like, let's work on emotional intelligence this week and do a couple things this week to try to improve that, So that's kind of the whole idea behind that. And kind of why I'm trying to lay these out, because one step at a time, you work on one thing, and then you'll see as the principles go, the next one ties right into it. Oh, and this is part of that.
I think you said it just the simple. You could sit down and I getting ready for today, I listened to a 30-minute UC Davis executive leadership on emotional intelligence discuss this stuff, and I'm like, exactly what you just said. I'm looking at it like this. First of all, why I'm such a furious man out there, and yes, I chose my word correctly, furious, because the emotional intelligence that is bankrupt in this country and around in our community is so grotesque to me, and that's why I'm so mad about it, is this stuff is easy, and it's really, in the generation that we grew up, I don't think there was a definition for emotional intelligence. There sure as hell wasn't two dudes talking about it on Saturday morning on their free time.
Not taught in school.
So when we're not teaching it, not talking about it, and it's not even a thing, we're really, really, really hurting and behind as a people. And this is exactly what I needed, somebody as a parent to kind of come in and say, hey, David, you want to talk to me about your feelings? In a different way, like, how are you feeling, instead of the imposition, get in the car, you have to go to school, it's important to learn, like, impose. That might have just been my family, but like, no, I just grew up as a child, like, impose, and I don't know about you, but maybe in jiu-jitsu, if I do this, like, what are you gonna do? Like, if I impose on you, I'm
dangerous, bro. Dangerous, coming with it.
But I've just learned that, like, when somebody is imposing, then there's gonna be a retraction, a withdrawal, and that's the last thing that you'd ever want to do in a relationship or trying to build something. You don't want people retracting from you. So the imposing, and it's like, that would be a simple task this week for anybody watching. Are you is your language or behavior imposing or exposing? Do you come in and
give me 1 second? It's gonna be the perfect thing to close with. Okay, so before we get out of here, I love that. Give them one thing you're gonna do this week to work on your emotional intelligence, and then one suggestion that you can have for someone else different.
One thing I'm gonna do, we didn't talk about it enough, and that'd be listening. I think it's this kind of the second rule of emotional intelligence. First, being self-aware. And I didn't get to drop the little quote about self-aware, so I'm gonna throw it in here. Do it. Aristotle said, the beginning of all knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom.
Okay.
And that is just
self-awareness.
The self-awareness. Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. You cannot be smart. That's what we're talking about, emotional intelligence. How could you possibly use any tools about what's coming in or anything if you don't know yourself, what you need, what you want, how you're feeling? So that's a little pearl that I love. Know yourself, and I think know yourself is biblical, but like
Yeah.
know thyself. It's just, this is really important. Self-awareness, keep learning yourself. Don't ever stop trying to learn yourself. But the second thing would be listening. Like, how are you taking in the information? So know yourself here first,
Okay.
and then I'm gonna do my best to listen. And I think the same letters that listen make up the word silent. I gotta check that out. I forgot to check that before.
It is. No, it is.
If they're the same letters, it's like, listen silently. Don't be ready to jump and answer and react. Again, we're gonna pause, respond, and just sit there and think about, like, if I ask somebody, hey, my wife Shayna, how are you feeling today, or how was work? First of all, ask. If I'm gonna ask, make sure I'm ready to listen, instead of just like, it's not just a commonality of this is 5 o'clock going through the motions. Like, listen, because if she actually feels heard, we're building a relationship, I understand her better, then we can move on. And then, like the training session, I know where she's at today, so I know how to behave now. It can't just be my standard, this is who I am, this is who she is. That would not work very well. So I'm gonna do my best to be a better listener. I like to talk, as hopefully y'all can see. We like sharing. I love listening to you today, but I'm gonna do my best to try and be a better listener, and do it silently, so I can just try and distract all the other stuff, nonsense out. Listen to the person, which includes, which we didn't talk about, one of my favorites is body language. In body language is awareness of the other person. They're telling you everything by not saying anything. Right. Listen to what they say, what they don't say, how they move, where it's coming from, or am I sitting like this, or if they're already like this, whatever they're saying is not coming from a fun place. Yeah. So anyway, that listen, and that listening is also to listen to the things that aren't said.
Awesome. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, that's it. We're going to wrap up the first ever Lyfe Cast podcast. Brother, thank you so much, my man. That was wonderful. One last time, tell them about Level 3 Fitness, your website, how to find you guys.
Too kind. You can check out level3fit.com, LEVEL 3 FIT.com. It's a pathway to healthy living. We help people with healing, mobility, and strength. The healing components, like we have massage therapists, physical therapists, mobility coaches, and personal trainers, and kind of help anybody at any age and any function get back on the path to healthy living. Yeah, absolutely. If you anyone out there who needs anything from physical therapy to just general pain management, prehab, rehab, or strength and conditioning for a specific sport or activity, Level 3 Fitness is going to be the best place to go in Denver. Absolutely. They know their stuff. All right, buddy. Again, I appreciate it. Thank you.